Looking overseas, top US and Chinese officials are set to meet next week in what the Americans expect to be difficult talks. This after Washington condemned Beijing's overhaul of Hong Kong's electoral system, calling it a continuing assault on democracy. Earlier, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said he hopes to re-establish dialogue with the US at all levels. A Chinese official in charge of Hong Kong policy told reporters today that Beijing's plans for electoral reform, coupled with the imposition of a security law, amount to a combination of punches to quell the chaos of recent years in Hong Kong. Joining me now from Hong Kong is our correspondent Claire Huang. Claire, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam welcomed the changes passed by Beijing and had described the move as timely. But what's the reaction from the pro-democracy camp?
Well, they're on the opposite sides of the divide, so you expect them to completely disagree with the pro-establishment camp, right? And here's where I stress that even within the pro-establishment camp, there's a bit of a discord despite the appearance of unity. But on the part of the pan-democrats, activists, including those exiled, in exile, including Nathan Law in the UK, Ted Hui in Australia, they're of the view that Beijing is rewriting Hong Kong's electoral system. And this is a direct breach of the one country, two systems principle, under which Hong Kong is guaranteed, a high degree of autonomy for 50 years from when the city was handed back to China in 1997. So the other point that they've made is that the overhaul is meant to deter pandems from, running for parliament in Hong Kong, and that leaves them very little room for participation in future. So what this also means is that some analysts and even pro-Beijing politicians have pointed out that the advances made over the past 20 years since the handover, basically advancements towards becoming more democratic, have been wiped out now. And, the system is now modeled after the Chinese parliament.
And on that note, Claire, as China tightens its grip on Hong Kong, are people likely to take to the streets in protest, as in 2019 when there were mass protests against plans to allow extradition to China, or is it different this time?
Well, Harry, let me ask you this question then. If there's a national security law of this magnitude, this type and scale, do you think your protest, despite having strong feelings and risk going to jail? So this is not to mention the fact that the more vocal politicians and activists are mostly either facing jail term because they're being charged, they're facing some charges of some sort, or they have already left Hong Kong.
Right. Now, separately, Claire, Hong Kong is also grappling with the new COVID-19 outbreak that is spreading fast. How are officials managing this new cluster?
Well, just give a bit of background about this latest outbreak, right? It's linked to a gym in Sai Ying Pun that's in the west. It's a gentrified neighborhood in the western part of Hong Kong Island. A 27-year-old trainer was infected, and he, through contact tracing, work done by the government, more than 240 people have been placed under quarantine. 50 people, including staff of the gym. The gym's called Ursus Fitness, and customers basically were tested positive. And we are expecting, dozens more added today. The magnitude of this cluster has the potential to trigger a fifth wave here, according to one of the health experts that the government consults with. Now, the gym is popular with experts, so this time around, the entire expat community, particularly those in the West, right, who live in central to Sai Ying Pun, are affected. And you have multiple banks such as Credit Suisse, HSBC, Morgan Stanley. The shutting of floors, asking staff to work from home, and then because it involves the expat community, we also have international schools shut and several other places because they go to different places to eat and things like that. So the government has issued mandatory testing notices to dozens of buildings in these neighborhoods. A health expert, David Hui, whom the government consults with, says that it's crucial to look at the coming 2 weeks to see whether there's a spread, basically. And but he said that it's still premature to shut all gyms. So what the government has done overnight is to tighten measures in gyms. So they're making it compulsory to wear your masks in the gyms. And then the usual existing measures apply, right? Things like no more than 4 people per fitness station, per class. There must be adequate spacing, that's 1.5 meters apart, and things like that.
Well, thank you so much for the update, Claire, and thank you for taking the time to come onto the show to speak with me. As always, do stay safe there. And that was the Straits Times' Hong Kong correspondent, Claire Huang.